Do you have a Texas car accident injury case? First, we're going to simplify this, and then we will go into more detail with each part. There are 3 parts that could determine whether you have a case or not. Number 1, you are not at fault for the accident. Number 2, there is available auto insurance to cover your case. And number 3, there are damages. In other words, you have bodily injuries. Before I go any further, you can go to our website, texascaraccidents.com, and answer 5 questions to see if you have a case. If you check the box off of each one of those, you likely have a case. But let's go into more detail because there are other factors that play important parts. Number 1, you are not at fault for this accident. Okay, but who says that you're not at fault for this accident? Because I've had many cases where clients believe that they're not at fault for the accident, and then they turn out to be at fault for the accident. So let's talk about a couple big evidence pieces that confirm that you're really not at fault for this accident. The best piece of evidence to have is a police officer that does an accident report that puts the other driver at fault. And even better, when the cop decides to also give the at-fault driver a citation. Another way that you could easily determine that the other person's at fault is the best way. They just admit it. They tell their insurance company, or they admit at fault at the scene and you get it on video camera, or they write it down and they sign it. Isn't it nice when we deal with people like that who just come right out and admit that they were at fault for an accident? The good of mankind has hope when that happens. Now, if you're in a situation where the police department is putting you at fault and the other driver is saying that you're at fault, I'll just be honest, it's going to be an uphill battle for you. The only way to get around that is if you have a witness that witnessed the accident, and really a strong witness, as in this witness has good credibility, or you have multiple witnesses that are on your side that could counter what the police officer says and what the other driver says. Of course, if video evidence comes out of the other person being at fault, that's a home run right there. It's really hard to argue video evidence showing the other driver is at fault. Number 2, there is available auto insurance for your case. Now, the first step in this is seeing if the at-fault driver has auto insurance. Once you do that and they have auto insurance, boom, it's checked right off. You can go directly against the other driver's auto insurance. But let's say that they don't have auto insurance, because 20% of drivers in Texas don't have auto insurance. So if you were involved in an accident where you're not at fault, it can be proven, but the other driver doesn't have auto insurance, the next step to take would be if you have protection against uninsured drivers. There is a certain coverage in Texas that you do have to request it to be on your policy. In fact, if you don't want it to be on your policy, you actually have to sign your name to say that you do not want this on your policy. But it is always good to have it, and it is called under or uninsured motorist coverage for bodily injury. In other words, the person that hits you is uninsured, and now you can tap into this part of your policy just like you're going after the other driver. So you can get your medical bills covered, you can get pain and suffering, you can get lost wages. It's just like you're going after the other driver, but you're using your own policy to do it. Now, there are very rare circumstances where, say, the person that hits you doesn't have insurance on their vehicle, but maybe they had insurance on another vehicle, and they were just in their friend's car at the time, and their friend didn't have insurance. It is possible that you can still go after The driver's policy, if they have available insurance coverage, you'll have to see if that policy will cover them in an accident where it wasn't their vehicle. The other rare occurrence is maybe you don't have insurance that protects you against uninsured drivers, but someone in your household does. And you can go and check their policy to see if their policy would cover you in this specific circumstance. It is rare, but you want to try to turn over every stone possible. Now, lastly, if the other driver doesn't have insurance and you don't have protection against uninsured drivers, once again, it's going to be an uphill battle for you. The only thing left that you can do is file a lawsuit directly against the person that caused the accident, which, let's face it, if they don't have auto insurance, they probably don't have a lot of assets to go after. At least that's the case most of the time. And if they don't have a lot of assets to go after, it's not going to be worth it to you or a law firm to get involved in this case and take it the whole entire way, get all the way to the courtroom, have the judge say, okay, Mr. or Mrs., you need to pay this amount of money. And then they're like, well, I don't have that amount of money. And then you're stuck. This person may have it on their credit and they may never pay it. It may be a judgment against them that they take to their grave. You just never know. So that's a hard battle to win. Then the last thing that you would do when all other options are exhausted is there's something called the Texas Crime Victims Packet. This is by a limited circumstance given to you by the state. It's very rare that you're going to get a full pain and suffering settlement. You may get them to take care of your medical bills, but it's a limited case basis, and they usually only take cases where there is just horrific things that occur in an accident or horrific crimes that play a part in the accident. Now, the last part, number 3, do you have damages? In other words, do you have bodily injury? Now, real quick, let me just let you know that if you checked off number 1 and number 2 where the other person's at fault and there is available auto insurance, you're now here in the damages section. And when it comes to property damage, it should be handled pretty quickly and fairly. If your vehicle's a total loss, it will likely be a Kelley Blue Book type of value. If your vehicle needs repairs, there's so much evidence out there of what it costs for a car to be fixed that the insurance company is likely not going to give you a hard time on this. There are rare occurrences where if you already had damage, or maybe it's a classic car, or there's a dispute of where the impact occurred. You know, maybe you got rear-ended, but now you're trying to say that you have front-end damage with no evidence of that. That could get tricky, but most of the time the property damage is covered. Now, the injury case is not so black and white. It is a very gray area because not everybody is affected in accidents the same way. An 80-year-old man may have different injuries than a 12-year-old girl. But nevertheless, whether your injuries are minor or major, you still have an injury case. Just the value of it may be different. So let me just break down a couple ways that you can make sure that you handle this part of your case the right way. Number 1, do you have injuries that can be proven? And the way that you prove your injuries is you get reasonable and necessary medical treatment for your injuries. The best way to do that is to get involved with a doctor who regularly treats car accidents. Most law firms can get you set up with this doctor, and the doctor agrees that they will get paid their bills back out of the case when it settles. The lawyers are the same way. They agree that they're going to represent you for free, but then when the case settles, they get their fees out of the case settlement. You're always going to put yourself in a better position when you're dealing with a doctor who regularly treats car accidents because he knows how to properly document the medical records. He knows the proper and reasonable and necessary treatment that you should get if you're in a car accident. He knows how to properly bill you for this treatment. And doesn't it feel better to know that you're working with a doctor who has seen your injuries probably hundreds, if not thousands of times by other car accident victims, It's a lot more secure than going to a random health insurance provider who has maybe never worked with a car accident case before, who maybe doesn't know how to document the bills correctly, document the records correctly, and they're just going to do a basic checkup and write your prescription and tell you to follow up. Where a car accident doctor is going to go more into physical therapy, chiropractic therapy, moving your body around. This is a more appropriate type of treatment if you're involved in a car accident. Now, there's two more things to mention here when it comes to the damages category. Number one, did you do everything in a reasonable time frame? Just because the other person's at fault and just because there's insurance available, if you waited 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, a year down the road to finally go and get medical treatment, it's very possible that the insurance company says, well, hold on, we're not going to pay for those bills because how do we know that that person didn't get hurt doing something else? And now they are going to the doctor and trying to say that their injuries now, 5 months later, are a part of that accident. The insurance company is going to have red flags go up. They're going to be, maybe you fell down the stairs yesterday. Maybe this is a sports injury or some other type of injury that now you're trying to pin against the auto insurance. It's always best to get all of your injuries documented as soon as possible. And it's always best to not allow big gaps in your medical treatment to form so that everything is very right in place. You got your initial evaluation because of your injuries, you went to the appropriate doctor to get the appropriate treatment, and now you are looking to settle your case. That is the best way to do it. And now lastly, you want to make sure that there's enough available policy limits for your case. In Texas, the minimum limits for injuries is $30,000 per person, $60,000 per accident. So let's say that you were in a really bad accident where you have $100,000 in medical bills right away. Well, you're already at the policy limits of a minimum limits policy if the person who hit you had a minimum limits policy. This becomes an issue because you need more medical treatment, but your bills are already over the policy limits. So then you're going to want to be careful of how you want to do this. If you want to go and get more medical treatment, you can, but you're going to have higher bills. The policy limits are not enough to cover everything. Then you're also going to want to go back to all the medical providers to see if you could work with a reduction on those bills, and we'll go further into that into some of our other videos. So those are the three main parts of whether you have a case or not. If you have any questions about your specific accident, you could absolutely leave a comment below and we will do our best to answer that question. You could also go to our website, texascaraccidents.com, and answer 5 questions to see if you have a case. And a friendly expert simplifying Texas car accidents will be there for you.